Welcome to Because You Need to Know. I'm Edwin K. Morse, President and Founder of Pioneer Knowledge Services. This series is your digital resource of valuable conversations with nonprofit and knowledge management enthusiasts from across industries and from around the globe.
Goeienaand almal, dit is heerlik om vanaand hier saam met julle te wees en ek sien so uit na hierdie gesprek. Good evening everyone, so this is me, I'm Hanlie Smuts. I'm saying hello in my first language, Afrikaans. I'm all the way from South Africa. I live in Pretoria, which is in the Gauteng province in South Africa. I am an associate professor at University of Pretoria. That is one of our universities here in the north of the country. Actually, when I joined university on a full-time basis, my colleagues in industry said, oh, you went across to the dark side. Absolutely loving the academic environment. I still engage with industry a lot, and I have the opportunity to actually solve business problems through research. I started my career, as a software developer, as a systems analyst, a business analyst. Also during this time, I was really very interested in knowledge management. In industry, in our company at that time, which was in the telecommunications sector, we outsourced our information technology department. The knowledge that we lost through this outsource arrangement totally outweighed the benefit that was actually part of the business case to outsource our IT department in the first place, right? So the services did not make up for the knowledge that we lost. So my PhD study at that time and my interest in knowledge management, it sort of just provided the context for the study. And my study then particularly looked at the knowledge flows in IT outsourcing and also managing the new knowledge that is created. Now, let me talk a little bit about my last project in industry. I had the wonderful opportunity to start up a joint venture for a telecommunication company that I worked at. And the purpose of this startup was to create a insurance product for the mass market in Africa. Yeah, to give you an idea, these are people that live on less than $2 a day. Apart from experiencing different cultures, the way that people do things, differently to what we do, we also dealt with lack of connectivity. Some, I guess, unique issues that we deal with in Africa, lack of connectivity where there's no Wi-Fi, using 2G phones, for example, where you cannot just launch a mobile application. You had to write and develop USSD applications. Over and above the fact that I could experience this engagement in Africa, part of the deliverables was a knowledge base. So you can imagine that you have to start up an operation in an African country. Now, both telecommunication and insurance are regulated, so you need licenses. Part of what we had to do was to create a repeatable blueprint, a knowledge base that enabled the rest of the operations to reference and to roll out very quickly. Yeah, so it was quite an interesting project. And then just how we applied the knowledge, the lessons learned.
When did you first find out or discover knowledge management?
So I guess learning was always part of the way that I worked, and it was one of my objectives. If I could teach someone, I was very happy. If I could learn something new, I was very happy. So this exchange and learning and exchange of knowledge was something that was always part of my role. The telecommunication industry where I worked in, we had a collaboration among operating companies. Knowledge sharing and...
I was more particularly trying to find out, when did you first find the doctrine or the knowledge management framework actually called knowledge management? What was your first introduction?
Oh, got it. It was actually when I completed my academic study. So although it was always inherent part of my engagement and my role, the formal consideration of frameworks, of knowledge exchanges, of the SETI model, the knowledge pyramid, all of this, only really when I completed my master's and my PhD study. And I had the wonderful opportunity, because I worked in industry when I did and completed these studies, I could apply what I've learned in my job. And the company allowed me to to do it that way.
That's a satisfying feeling, isn't it? When
Absolutely.
actually the academic structure is actually applying to your real life.
Absolutely. Totally agree with that.
The barriers to adoption and adaption. What are specific in knowledge management do you find, especially now in an academic structure? What's the biggest hindrance to knowledge management where you are?
These two aspects that I can highlight. The first is, people perceive knowledge management to be fuzzy. So when I deal with CFOs, for example, and you ask for funding, then it is just, oh no, this is too fuzzy. But what's in it for the company? How will it generate revenue? How will it contribute to our bottom line? Or people just see it as part of a system. Oh, but we have a knowledge management system. The fact that no one accesses the system, that the knowledge in the system is old, that it's not validated,
Right.
etc. Yes. So that's sort of the one aspect to it. I think the other aspect to it is the evolution of technology that we see now. So data is generated at such an unprecedented pace that organizations realize that there's knowledge in the data, yeah? But what do we do? How do we get the knowledge and that insight out of the data? So that for me is the second aspect that in here with us is a lot of conversation around those two aspects now.
What is the industry that's leading in knowledge management as you see it where you are? Do you see a segment that's way ahead and an industry segment that's way behind?
That is a more difficult one for me to say, Edwin, I must be honest. There is pockets of really good practice and best practice. In South Africa now, I am also the deputy chair for the Knowledge Management South Africa board, and we are in the process of professionalizing a knowledge management practitioner as a career, right, as a role. So if I think about people in the society that I get to engage with, there's pockets, even in government, in municipalities in South Africa, that is really doing excellent work. In the private sector, there's also pockets, technology, mostly in the ICT sector, technology-driven companies, also some of the digital native enterprises that is really doing excellent work. But it's almost like they didn't have to transform from some older framework or of some prior knowledge, yeah? When they started with a new thinking. They hired in the right people with the right knowledge to actually take this new sort of vision forward.
Where would you say the country is, or you said municipalities, you're seeing that happen there.
Yes.
Is there a top level knowledge management office? Is there a superstructure that's saying we're going this way? Like with the US, we had opendata.gov and all those big things that made things a little more transparent.
I'm not a bit aware of one particular area. Knowledge management at a government or at national level forms part of an existing department. As a society, though, we do have the opportunity to influence and to serve on boards or think tanks.
Is anyone in your area or by region or industry looking at the ISO for knowledge management as a foundational?
So we are using or referencing the ISO 30401 of 2018 quite a bit, but mostly in organizational consulting type aspects, yeah? We are part of a broader global network. We are providing input and thinking around institutionalizing it, if you like, or using it as a maturity type assessment, and then also accredit people, practitioners, right? So we are part of an international body that look after, or that is busy with that process.
I found that ISO, when it came out, that it was like a punch in the arm that knowledge management really needed to bring a substantial framework across the globe, because there seemed to be such a hodgepodge or a mismatch of what's knowledge management. How do you do it? How do you, and all those things. But then I've heard just as many folks saying, it didn't do anything. It didn't help.
And to organizations where we used it, it was applied to almost do like gap analysis to say, but they said that this is our practice in our organization, and in order to sort of put a stake in the ground to say, okay, but this is where we can improve. I think that makes it a very practical and applicable tool.
An excellent point, and I think a lot of organizations kind of miss that easy first step.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to figure out how to do things, just do a gap analysis to see what's missing first.
Exactly.
So how do you define knowledge management?
That's an interesting aspect of a question. From an academic perspective, I have all the definitions, and there is so many definitions. The old traditional thinking about data, zeros and ones, when you add context to data, it now becomes information. When you group information, you now get knowledge, right? And especially now with the large data sets, because I also do some work in big data management, it has sort of changed my view about how I think about knowledge and knowledge management. I read somewhere where the person actually said data equals knowledge. Yeah. That sort of puts a question mark, I guess, on the way that we think about a knowledge and then the particular and the specific role of data. For me, it is sort of twofold, I guess, in the way that I apply it, expertise and the knowledge and the skills and the competencies and the know-how. But there is also a very practical side for me to it. And that is the application, the sharing, the learning component of it.
So what you're saying is it's actually kind of changed, right?
Yes.
I mean, with the technology advances and how we're going trajectory-wise with what the future is going to be,
yes.
I would say there's two schools of thought on knowledge management definition. It only exists in your head. Knowledge is in your head. It's not external.
Yes.
But as the integration possibilities exist between the biomass, the human element, and the digital or electronic or hardware software components, those two worlds are starting to come together, very much so. Will there be a definable difference between internal, external at some point if we get to the point of when we become merged with digital technology? I think there's a lot to discover, and it helps to establish foundational agreements. I think there's just a lot that's on the verge of discovery or understanding. And that's what's so exciting about everything.
Exciting, yes.
You just got to start stocking up on your good science fiction shows and movies and books to see where we're going next.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for being a part of our knowledge exchange. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Edwin. It was great working with you and learning from you.
Because You Need to Know is designed to bring people's experience and their knowledge forward to be shared. I'm Edwin K. Morris, and I thank you for joining in to listen to another conversation brought to you as a public service of Pioneer Knowledge Services, a nonprofit tax-exempt organization with a charitable knowledge management purpose. Find us online at pioneer-ks.org and add your voice to the conversation on Facebook.